Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Edison. What I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. Our guest today is a unique individual. Met him a couple times, and I have to say he's one of the smartest men I know. He probably doesn't think that, but he is one of the smartest men out there. Or if he does, well, I'm telling him again. Anyway, his name is Kasim Aslam. How you doing, sir? Did I get it closely right?
Ed, you nailed it. I appreciate you. I'm living the dream, buddy. How you doing?
Good, man. Really nice to really get to know you. I met you at was that TNC, Traffic and Conversion. We really didn't speak a lot there. Spoke a lot here at the last speakeasy, and I mean what I said. Right, you are one of the smartest men I know. You're so far out there, and some people you probably run into other people you think are smarter than you, but a lot of times we don't understand who we are, even though sometimes we think we're I don't know, we're not fake, but you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it's
Imposter
nice to,
syndrome.
yeah, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that people appreciate you for who you are, even though, because I learned a long time ago doing this, it's very lonely at the top, right? You don't know who to trust. You don't know who your real friends are. A lot of people are out to get you because you're so successful, but I'm gonna let you know right here, safe space, dude. Just like at college.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I'm going to fight my instinct for self-deprecation and just say thank you. I appreciate the compliment. And I hope to, at a minimum, at least live up to like 1% of that
Okay,
impression.
stop.
And
You just did it. You just did it. Stop. Just say thank you. No, you are what a lot of people might not know who you are, but you have, I think, the number one Google agency out there. You are the man to go to if you ever want anything. There's other people, but they're not the ones. You are the man, and it was nice to understand what's going on out there. But how long did it take you to become? Because that's what you are, right? The number one Google agency
Yeah,
out there.
I like to say we're the best and most respected Google Ads agency on the planet. We're number one sometimes. It's by the ranking that I'm using, by the way, is just organic ranking. Like, who does Google think the most relevant Google Ads agency is? And for me, that means that you're the top. And we tend to vacillate. Usually I'm number one, but every now and then I'll get knocked down by, and the agencies that I'm fighting with are good agencies. They're good folks. They do good business. And so, it's nice to have competitors that you respect, at least the ones that are at the top. But we're always top three for damn sure. So we're one of the top Google Ads agencies worldwide, which Google is the largest marketing mechanism on the planet by a multiple. So it's a pretty interesting mountain to have climbed. I can't say that I expected it to happen, to be honest with you. Like, I was just trying to make money. And somewhere along the way, like, we got really good at what we were doing.
That's kind of how it happens, right?
Yeah.
Life happens while you're living it, right? So,
Yeah.
how did you always think you were going to be? I mean, what you're in the market you're in and what you do. I mean, what was the little boy of you wanting to do as a kid?
Yeah. Well, if you ask, I remember when I was 7 years old, I had a teacher named Mrs. Harthan, and she was awesome. She was the first one to identify that I wasn't retarded, that I was maybe a little bored, because everybody else kind of thought like, oh, this kid's bouncing off the walls. Like, let's put him in a padded room. And so she put me in this program. San Antonio, Texas, where I went to school, had this really phenomenal gifted program. And it changed the course of, my pedagogical experience, at least for that short epoch, elementary school, which I think we're too dismissive of. The Jesuits used to say, give me until a child is 6. Like, we focus so much on post-secondary education, and high school is so important, whatever. I think those early stages are critical. And I ended up in a program that was awesome. They let us do like some really creative things, but one of them was kind of this flash forward exercise. And it was so much more than, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I mean? Like, it really did a deep dive. But the problem I ran into when I was a kid is I had no idea. Like, my list was long, and it was also really like violent. Like, I wanted to be a professional assassin for the CIA. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be an actor, an author, a filmmaker, a CEO, an astronaut, like, and I think a lot of kids are like that. Like, we want to be all the things. And I think we do children a disservice by saying, like, hey, what small, tiny corner of the world can we cram you in? And why don't we have you thinking that way right out of the gate? And we bludgeon them into it, and we do that through a lot of conduits. It's a multivariate problem. It's not just schooling. It's also like the overarching social narrative. We do it to ourselves now. The first thing you say to a human when you meet him, I do this. I'm indicting myself along with everybody else, but it's like, oh, what do you do? Like, let me limit you down to this small little teeny tiny thing of what do you do? And I think really what we're trying to get at is like, why are you important? Like, why are you relevant to me right now in this moment? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think it's a really relevant and important data point. And so it's not the person asking that needs to change, it's the person receiving that question. I think we all need to stop and realize, like, at any point I could do anything. I could stop right now today and I could go be, whatever it is that I wanted to be. And as long as we're reminded of that, I think it really kind of takes some of the pressure off. That was a hell of a departure, Ed. Forgive me, but yeah, that's
No, you're good. I asked you a
yeah.
question, and you answered the question. You just,
Took the long
I'm
way.
gonna say something. Chrissy was like, the last time I did the editing of him, it was so hard. He was talked so fast, and you're not talking as fast as you normally do. I'm trying to get you into different things that are uncomfortable, possibly, about you. Not, maybe everybody asked you your childhood, but so, I mean, because no, I never thought I was going to be in the mortgage industry, right? That's not something you go to school for. It's like, I had no idea. I thought I was going to be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
And so I went in the Navy and then figured out I hated medical, right? And that's not what I wanted to do. So then I went to school and got my bachelor's and master's and fell actually into the mortgage industry. And I love numbers, so it's perfect for me. I'm not a calculus guy. I'm more of the smaller numbers, but I'm not that smart. So
Yeah,
I have
you
my
go.
moments. I have my moments, but it's not in calculus. So
I tell people I'm a data-driven marketer, and they think like, "Oh, you must be a big math guy." And I'm like, "No." Like, I respect math deeply, but I'm not like doing quadratic equations in my head. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
yeah,
remember when they taught that, and they're like, "You're going to use this all the time." No, I'm not.
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm absolutely
Only
not.
time I used it was in this class, and never used it again.
You know what's funny about it though is I do think there's some psychological priming there. I think that there's something about the way it's almost. I've never taken psychedelics. I plan on it someday, but I'm afraid of them. But when I hear people talk about taking psychedelics, I get the same impression. I feel like they had the same experience that I have when I'm exposed to knowledge that I otherwise would not have had access to. Like this gets. I'm gonna be a total douchebag here, dude. But so forgive me. When I read Plato, like that's like it's like taking a psychedelic because all of a sudden you're like, holy shit. I never and maybe let's bring this more contemporary. I'll update it. I feel the same way about listening to Jordan Peterson, or Sam Harris, or some of like these really phenomenal thought leaders. It's psychological priming. It reframes your paradigm in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do by yourself, at least not quickly. And learning math or really anything that is foundationally relevant, even though you're not going to use it, I still think it can be a worthy endeavor. I think the way schools approach it is abysmal. I think that they're that the whole Prussian system of education that we're on is a freaking. I have an obsession with Montessori school. I don't know if you know that, Ed. So we'll get on that Tupperware party someday.
That's all right.
Um, yeah.
You're right, and I think it's worse for boys. Right? I think it's the way I have school set up. It's the worst for boys. The
Why
way
do you say that? I'm just curious.
because most kids can't sit. Boys can't sit in a desk without moving. They got to move. They
Oh,
got to do stuff. They have to be taught differently. And I think the way our school's set up is it's not the right way for boys. And I mean, girls, it should be selected for each individual. I don't want to say, well, you got to keep boys together and girls together. That kind of, I'm just saying, I just don't think it's focused enough on boys. I had a son, I have a couple of them, but this one, Blake, who's in the Army, he was so gifted and so far out there. He was bored. Right.
mhm.
And but he was causing trouble.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
You can relate to that, right?
I went to I graduated from a high school called Southwest Secondary Learning Center. It was a last chance school. So they put a bunch of kids in there that got kicked out from all the other schools. The guy who founded the school is now in federal prison. You can look him up. His name's Scott Glassroot. He's a real piece of work. And my brother and I both were removed from traditional education. My little brother did 5 years in prison. He's the smartest kid I've ever known. He's got a 160 IQ. Like he's it's not just he's street smart, book smart. He's the most eloquent human I've ever encountered. Um, Words are his superpower. He's an assassin. He's clinical with his, and it's not just words. Words are just an indication of the way somebody thinks. And he was not. He was poorly served by that system.
Mhm.
And I don't know that there was another option for him, to be honest with you. Like when I looked at what it is that he had to contend with, not to play the victim card, because we're all responsible for our own actions, and I don't think you get to blame other people or other systems. But I do think you can build a powder keg. You know what I mean? You can build a powder keg and hand a kid a match. And, like, is it the kid's fault if he lights the match? Yeah, of course it is. But what a shitty situation to be in as that kid.
I know stuff about you, but basically we've both probably had shitty childhoods, right? I lost my dad when I was 12, hairy cell leukemia, the whole thing. I didn't have that family unit after that anymore. So, and I know certain things. And so I think a lot of that plays into those things too.
Of course.
But I think a lot has to do with when you have really smart kids, you sometimes don't know how smart they are because where they come from. You follow what I'm getting at?
Yeah. So what's funny about my brother is if he'd been born in, I don't know what, the Hamptons or whatever, he'd probably be a C-level exec. My little brother was a dealer, and he was not a low-level dealer. Like he availed the entrepreneurial opportunity available to him in our particular context. So, like the some of the chances that we might have had in a different environment just weren't there. And so he was really successful with what he did. And this gets weird, dude, because I'm probably going to get canceled for saying this, but I think there's a lot about the situation and circumstance that he conquered that's admirable. Like, he built a business that was massive with a group of people that have teeth. Like, if you go into whatever, you go into bond trading or whatever, like, yeah, that's super intense and very competitive, but people aren't going to kill you if you mess up. And so, sometimes I look at what Sammy's done, and I think it's so much more impressive. Not just that he was able to do it, but then also that he was able to rehabilitate and get out and now turn around. He's running a multi-million-dollar business. He's on the straight and narrow. He talks to other people about some of his failings and mistakes, and it's just is what it is, man. Like, yeah.
No, hey, this right here, it's this book.
What is that? The Blockchain Blueprint?
That guy?
I never read it.
Yeah, that's okay. I just did a podcast on him a couple of days ago. Same thing. He grew one of the largest pot dealerships in the world, and it was all his, and they did amazing job. And then things happen, go to jail, get out. Now he's a huge blockchain guy on the East Coast and Virginia or someplace. Probably not the most largest, but to use that same knowledge. The same thing it takes to do a legal drug, you can do the same thing with a legal, with something else. It's just you have customers who want something, and you got a way to get it to them, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, it's no difference. It's just they chose a different way to do it, and now they're going the legal route, right?
Yeah.
Because marijuana is legal in California and other places. So
that's what's funny about it, dude. We've got people locked up today for selling stuff that is no longer, is no longer illegal.
Right.
That line in the sand too, the things that we decide to protect people in society from, and then the things that we don't. I mentioned psychedelics earlier. Again, I haven't taken them, but the reason I'm so interested in them is because people are using them for therapy.
Right.
And I've got a really close friend, and then I've got some people on the peripherasis of my circle that they've used MDMA therapy, and they've spoken to me about just how important it is. One gentleman in particular who I really respect, and dude, he's a big deal. He's a big deal. He consults with Fortune 100 CEOs, like you would know him. He has said to me, to quote, "It's the most important thing I've ever done for myself."
Yeah.
That's illegal, but alcohol is legal. And I'm not saying alcohol should be illegal, because we saw what happened in prohibition, but it's interesting because alcohol is so destructive. Like, it's so destructive. And psychedelics, you'd have a hard time convincing me, based off of the data that I've been exposed to as I've been doing this research, that there's anything wrong with any of them, period. They don't contribute to, increase in aggression, violence, crime, poverty, homelessness. And yet they're illegal because, and I think it might just be our puritanical approach to the utilization of substances, but we've drawn these weird ass lines. And then, we have the largest prison population per capita in the freaking world. Something to the tune of like 5% of our populace will end up behind bars at some point. And it's over these weird, arbitrary rules. My little brother was never convicted of a violent crime. And yet he spent 5 years of his life in prison for moving plants. You know what I mean?
No, I
Because
understand. Yeah.
some geriatric legislator decided like, oh, that plant is bad. But I mean, do look at tobacco. Look at how many people tobacco murder, and yet, but that's allowed. And I think a lot of that has to do with just more with what's socially integrated and accepted, not necessarily anything logically based.
I totally agree, man. You're talking to a choir because I know a lot of vets who are going and going doing ayahuasca, doing a bunch of other
Yeah.
stuff to get through their PTSD and so they do it in other countries, right?
Right.
They fly over there to do it, and they're doing. And there's like this stuff of the horny, this toad, and all this other stuff that they do. I'll tell you offline. There's somebody I know who did what you just talked about.
Yeah.
It might be the same person, but because there's no sense putting it out here, so people don't need to know unless they
Sure.
want to release that. But I think so. You have this, what we've been talking about, right? But then now I'm going to change a little subject here. Now you can manipulate with Facebook what people
What
say
people think. Yeah.
and think, and that's okay, right? Because the people in charge right now, I'm not want to get canceled myself, thinks that as long as it works for them, it's okay. If it works against them, it's not okay, right? So I'm gonna get a little political here, but you have all the Capitol people, right? Capitals, that the January 6th people, right? Still in prison, still in stuff, locked up as domestic terrorists
Mhm.
for just going in there, walking around. If you've seen the videos, they're just walking around. They're doing stupid things. They didn't do anything, and they're all locked up still, being abused in these things as terrorists. But you have these other people who can do manipulating whatever they want, and there's no issue behind that. Because I remember you saying something that potentially that could have happened, right?
There's no. I don't
Not
think a
evidence, but
Well, no, that's not what I was going to say. Actually, I don't think a logical person who understands the way that Facebook and Google work algorithmically. So that's the prerequisite, because a lot of people have opinions.
right.
But we have to default to the believable parties. And so you take the believable parties are people that understand the way that Facebook and Google work algorithmically. There's not a person who understands the way that those mechanisms work algorithmically who could argue that it's not possible. There's no way you could argue that the manipulation of thought is impossible via those network conduits, because we've seen it happen. And so for people to say that the elections could have been influenced by not just the algorithms, but also people utilizing the algorithms for nefarious means, like, of course that
Of
happened.
course it is.
Of
I
course.
know.
Now let's
I'm just trying
flashback
to
though.
take, like, people wouldn't
Yeah.
do that, but people would
No,
do that.
have
Yeah.
you ever read anything about Alexander Hamilton?
Yeah.
Okay, so Alexander Hamilton was like the first that I know of, and I'm sure there are people that predate him, but as far as I'm aware, in this country, he was the first clickbait artist. Like, he used words and narrative in order to sway public opinion, and he did it in a kind of a and I'm not bashing the guy because he's freaking amazing and brilliant, but like the celebratory story of Hamilton is only half of the story. The other half of the story is he was printing some rag sheet bullshit to push across his own narratives, and that didn't require the internet. It required the printing press. So I don't think what's happening is an advent of the internet. I think what's happening is always happened, but all we've done is amplify the efficiency of it to a scale that we can no longer control. We can no longer control the speed or efficacy at which we are manipulating the masses, and ourselves included. And so what I said when you and I were at that awesome event together and I was on stage, the note that I made to everybody is, our fingers are pointed outward.
Right.
You're the problem, he's the problem, she's the problem, they're the problem. And what we need to do is we need to turn that around and decide to hold ourselves accountable to the standard that we want to judge the rest of the world by, and see where it is that I'm the problem. And what's interesting about my talk on stage, if you'll remember, is a gentleman had a pretty visceral reaction to that. He had a very emotional outburst where he started saying, "But what about?" And he went down the list.
Everybody else.
Yeah, everybody else. Like, what about the Rothschilds and the central bank and the government and 9/11? And he's going down the list. And I was like, dude, I'm not even gonna tell you I disagree with you. What are you gonna do about that? Like, you need to focus on the thing that you can do. And every single one of us, to a person. And if you disagree with this, by the way, don't listen to anything else that I'm going to say, because you and I are in entirely different camps. from a paradigm perspective. That's not diminishing. All I'm saying is you're not going to get anything else out of me. We are all guilty of cognitive dissonance. We're all guilty of selective exposure. We're all guilty of confirmation bias. We're all guilty of echo chamber, and not just creating our own echo chamber, but perpetuating it. And if you don't see that, if you don't believe that, then I believe strongly that you're not just part of the problem, you're part of the single biggest problem that we're currently facing from a societal perspective. And that's because it's digitally enforced. And before we can say what they need to do or what regulation or what companies or whatever, we all need to stop and analyze the way that we engage with content. There's a Columbia University study that's absolutely freaking terrifying. It says that 61% of the news that we're exposed to comes from other people, not news outlets. So take that idea and put it on a shelf. 61% of the news that you're exposed to comes from other people. 59% of the news that people share, they share without reading. So the majority of what it is that you're being exposed to is not vetted. It's not even like a logical or illogical person even stop to read it. You just look at the headline and you're like, oh yeah, that supports my echo chamber. That supports this narrative that I want to push. I'm going to share this. And we're all guilty of it. I am too. And so what we need to do is stop and realize, is my commitment to my ideology or is my commitment to the truth? And if your commitment is to the truth, then you have to start to think about how dangerous the truth can be. But what if the truth is counter to your narrative? You know, I'm something of a militant libertarian anarcho-capitalist, or I was as a young man. And as I get older, I really start to wonder, like, I wonder if that's even a viable option given this new epoch that we're in. You know, like, am I this whole, you know, Ayn Randian Gulch horse shit? Like, am I just pulling the wool over my own eyes? And I think we need to think that way, politically, economically, spiritually. I think we need to look at ourselves and decide, like, where are the gaps? And because if we don't, we're opening ourselves up to manipulation. And it's I think I can say this, I'll go this far, but no further, because I don't want to be incendiary. We know for a fact the manipulation is happening, right? Like, that's a guarantee. And maybe it's just a person, like it's your aunt trying to get everybody to vote for X, or it's this group, or it's this, you know, government or whatever. We know for a fact, for a 100% undeniable fact, that people are trying to manipulate the way we think. And the way to guard against that is to root yourself in truth. And the way to root yourself in truth is to humble yourself to a point to where you're actually willing to question the foundations of your belief, which is terrifying. You know, there's an evolutionary process that stopped us from doing that. And I think we need a complete and total societal reframe. And not to sound all freaking naive and puppies and rainbows and shit, but I think we're capable of it. You know, I've seen people that have been able to do it, and the way they function in the world is so admirable. And now it's just our job. The problem is everybody has to do it for themselves. Like, you need every single individual human to step up and be responsible for themselves. That's a tough call, but it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, we can do that.
No, I totally agree, because here, you know, there's nothing different than in today that hasn't been here forever, right? We just get access to it faster,
Right?
During the Vietnam War, right? The war was going on. We didn't really see much of it because it was on TV, and you only had 3 channels back then. And you know, they would send the stuff over. It would take longer. When guys come back, it would take longer to get here, so they would resolve a lot of their PTSD and a lot of stuff, because they were on ships for months, right, to get here. Now they're in the sandbox today, and tomorrow they're home with their wife, right? So there's a lot of issues there. What I'm getting at is the difference is it's just so quick in our face, and you're right. People only read the headlines. They don't have time to do anything else. They read the headline, oh my God, forward it. But if you read the rest of the article, it says nothing about that headline. Right. It says it could potentially be like this, or it could be like, and so we are guilty of it. And the manipulation you're talking about, it's been here forever. It's called marketing. So,
yeah,
right. That we're trying to get people to buy our products, but now we're trying, and the difference is whether it's a political person as a product or whether it's something you're selling as a product. The difference is we really get people upset now, emotional more than ever before. In the last few years, it's really about emotion more than ever before. And I think the
Yeah.
more emotional you get people, the more excited they get and the more they do things.
So do you know Tucker Max?
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to a podcast Tucker Max was on. It's called like Doomer Optimist or something, it was really, it's the first time I ever heard it. It was really interesting. But he was talking about the woke folks, and he compared them, and I don't think this was his comparison. I think he borrowed it from another thought leader, but I don't know who, so I'm going to attribute it to him. He compared them to the Puritans, and he says that the way that the woke archetype is attempting to mold our civilization is perfectly analogous to the way the Puritans were attempting to like cleanse the world of whatever they thought to be sinful based off of, you know, their own dogmatic identification of, you know, the quote unquote sin. And I heard that, and dude, it like stopped me in my tracks. Because I was like, holy shit. Here's what's interesting about the woke people is they're hard to argue against. It's difficult because you're talking to somebody like, oh, you don't believe in equality? Well, it's like, well, no, of course I believe in equality. You know, like, why wouldn't I? You don't believe in racial justice? Yeah, of course I believe in racial justice. You don't believe in equal rights for women or for gender, for trans folks or for whatever. It's like, yeah, like, why wouldn't I? You know, every empathic person on the planet would say, but then they back you into this corner to where, well, if you believe all that, then you're now in this. It's a cage. It's almost an intellectual parlor trick, the way that they've pulled it off, because they play this transitive property. Well, if you believe in equality, then you believe that, of course, and now they've pushed you into this position where it's like, man, I don't know how you connected those dots, but I don't think it was fairly done. And it's just like the Puritans did. You know, it's like, oh, well, you don't believe in goodness and righteousness and godliness. And it's like, well, yeah, of course I believe in those things. And it's like, well, then, you know, and then they'd start in on whatever weird ass axe they had to grind. And we're dealing, and what's worse is they're so freaking self-righteous. You know, go piss off one of the woke brigade, and I mean, Jesus help you. Like, it's over, you know, and they're vitrolic. And I don't know how to contend with people like that. Like, I don't know how to contend with people that you can't, like, they're not listening for damn sure to you or to themselves. They're just speaking this, it's like a record just playing. And what's worse is they don't understand their own dogma. Because I can dismantle somebody, and I've been dismantled. We've all been on the receiving end of this, to where somebody presents a case to you and you're like, oh gosh, I've been looking at that the wrong way. But the only way that can happen, the only way that you can dismantle, you know, ideological commitments like that, or if people understand the roots of them. If people don't understand the roots of them, then they're sitting there and they're defending this orb, this disembodied nebulous orb, and you can't attack it because you have to attack things at the root. They don't even understand the freaking root of their own ideological commitments. So, I mean, man, I think they're a violently dangerous group of people, and they're made so more by the fact that they're so ephemeral. Like, they're not. There's no head. And I think a lot of that, and now I'm going to get in real trouble here. Hopefully nobody ever hears me say this, but a lot of that stems from the fact that the woke crowd tends not to be a very successful group of people. It's usually people that can't climb their own dominance hierarchy. They can't accomplish anything of actual substance. And so the way they choose to flex whatever muscle they think they can flex, and it's almost to their credit, like, they're trying to do good, and you can see that in them. But the way they try to leave their mark or whatever, you know, get whatever it is they're going to have written on their tombstone, is by policing other people and telling other people what the hell they should be doing. And it's a dangerous human, man. It's a dangerous person to be around.
Right. And, you know, and all this is learned, right? I'm going to tell you that right now. So any of the extreme stuff on both sides, right or left, whatever, it's learned, right? I was raised in a family of bigotry, right? Luckily, after he passed away at 12, I was no longer there, right? It changed, right? So a lot of people, you know, so this is learned behavior. My kids don't even understand it, right? What racism is. However, because they're Asian or white or whatever, they have to be racist. So I don't want to get into this whole thing and people saying, well, this is what you went on this whole thing. It's not about that. It's like, I'm a vet. I'm used to working with anybody. I don't care who you are, right?
Yeah.
You could have came from Mars or wherever. I don't care. As long as you have the same beliefs as me, meaning that you want to do the best, you leave this world better than you found it.
Hmm.
Right. I always tell my kids, whatever you leave wherever you are better than you found. If there's trash there, pick it up, throw it away. Right. Yeah. It's not your job. It's not your way you're supposed to do it, but you're supposed to leave it better than you found it, period. And that's how you should go forward. And I understand where you're coming from that side. And by the way, when you said, do I know Tucker Max? Yeah, he was like episode number 7. And he talked about David Goggins' book. And he actually put in there how much David Goggins made. I was going to drop it at the event we were at and say, hey, if you want to know how much he made, just listen to my podcast.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's awesome.
$22 million, by the way. So
just off his book
off
sales,
his
gross
book.
revenue?
Yeah, off his book. Yeah. He would only made, so the traditional publishing, they were offering him 300,000 and he would have made maybe another 6 million. He ended up paying, I think, $100,000 to get his book self-published. Everything they did, he has enough for 2 books. So his first one, and then with all the sales and the digital, it ended up being about 22 million.
That makes me feel so good, dude. That guy deserves it.
Oh,
what amazing! You know, he's a volunteer firefighter now.
Oh, dude, yeah. No, not now. He's always been that way. He goes away for about 3 months. He jumps into those fires, the craziest shit behind the lines. He does. He gets paid $15 an hour, by the way, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the craziest stuff.
Human. Dude, he's such a good example, though. He's a person that does for himself. And you brought up a really good point, Ed, that I want to highlight. I think the line of demarcation here is, are you a person that's trying to change the world by the actions you're taking? So if you see trash, pick it up. Or are you a person that's trying to change the world by changing other people's actions? The former, I believe, has a shot. The latter, I think is the closest thing to demonic that we've got in this plane.
It's been here forever. The problem is we just know, and because there's so many avenues to hear about it. They're doing lives here. They're doing here over here, on YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever. It's everywhere now. You know how you do that? Just shut this shit off. Right?
Yeah, but so I've had this argument with people too. I'm going to fight you on that, and I'm probably going to be wrong. I want to fight you.
You don't have to fight me. You just tell your side. I don't have a problem with you telling your side. I'll tell my side. You tell your side. Hey, we'll get along.
I'm fighting myself on it, so we're gonna fight together. Because I was kind of like, all right, I'm just not gonna pay attention. And you know what did it to me, dude? Is there was an image of a little boy who had just drowned after his parents tried to flee. I forget what horrible country. I think it was Syria. And there's all these Middle Eastern people who are just trying to get the hell out and get away from, which maybe I won't dive into politically, but I felt a sense of guilt.
Because you were not there?
Well, dude, here's the thing is that little boy looked just like my little boy.
Right.
So I see this 3-year-old little boy, and you can look it up. It was this iconic image, and they plastered it freaking everywhere. And he washes up onto this beach. I forget where. He washes up onto this beach, and he just looks like he's sleeping. And I saw the thing, and I just broke down weeping. Like I couldn't stop crying because he looked, and I just won the geographic lottery, right? Like one thing that pisses me the fuck off. Am I allowed to curse here, by the way?
It's too late. You've already done it.
Sorry. One thing that pisses me off
because we say explicit on our stuff, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah. I don't like when people say I'm proud to be an American unless they've served. I think if you serve, like you, Ed, you get to say I'm proud to be an American. I think all the rest of us, we get to say grateful. Because part of me is like, what the fuck are you proud of? You're proud of, you won the weird geographic lottery that put you on this side of the line, you idiot. Like you did nothing. You did nothing to earn this, to deserve this, to own it. Again, unless you served, unless you put your life and your body and your time on the line, you have nothing to be proud of. You get to be grateful. You get to be dropped down on your knees, fucking grateful for this amazing heritage we've been handed. And the more I read, the more I realize just how unlikely this little experiment that is America is. And like what a gift and a blessing. And we're actively trying to destroy it on both sides. The left and the right is just shitting on it nonstop on both sides.
So get in the middle.
So really. Aristotle said it first, man. It's the golden mean. It's the middle way. But the reason I bring all that up is because I'm sitting here in the safest country that's ever existed, in basically opulence, and I'm seeing this little 3-year-old boy wash up onto the beach because his mom and dad were like trying to save him, and it destroyed me. So I was like, I'm not going to engage in anything ever again. Like, I'm out of social. I'm not watching that. I don't need that image in my mind. And the problem is like, maybe I needed that. Like, I need to be aware when things like that happen, but it's a hard balance, like how many dead 3-year-old kids can I see before either I'm dismantled or I'm jaded? So I vacillate between wanting to be aware of what's going on and be informed so that maybe there is something that I can do from a personal responsibility standpoint. And then also realizing that there is a circle of influence and circle of concern, and my circle of concern is always going to be larger than my circle of influence. And I just need to focus on my circle of influence. It's a hard balance, man. It's tough.
Well, here's an example, right? All right. So I'm going to just say my wife has like 100 people on her Facebook, right? It's just her friends, right? That's all she has, right? And we have ridiculous. And she's like, why do you have that? It's like, because that's what we do, right? That's how we are. But she just only sees the people she needs, right? She works for Kaiser. She doesn't need to see anybody else. Well, I mean, yeah, you talked about that boy, right? And I was walking through the airport, leaving Austin, and there's a dude on the ground. They're doing CPR on him, like me, big fat white guy. Anyway, and it's like, holy shit, I need to start take care of, I got to stop coming to these speakeasies because I'm drinking too much here. Anyway, basically what I'm looking at is though you're like, oh, yeah, no, I don't do old fashions, but I do wine. But the issue is the fact that I know somebody took a picture of that and posted it somewhere. Right. Did they really need to do that? No. I know of some people who were eating barbecue at the time. Yes, I could have like took a picture of that and sent it to them and say, this is what's going to happen to you if you keep eating that barbecue. Right. Because it's really good stuff. But the issue is it's stuff that we don't need to send. We don't need to put that stuff out there, but we feel like, oh my God, I want to be first. Just like we're all press all of a sudden. So my biggest thing is, if you don't, the easiest way is just ignore a lot of that stuff, right? Only focus on the people you want to focus on. You can't fix other people. You can only control yourself, right? You can do the best you can for your kids. I'm going to tell you right now, as I told you the other night, when you hit 12 and 14, good luck. Because I'm there, but they're good. I mean, my son, right? He did everything the right way, right? Or we just didn't catch him. Me? Oh my God, I was horrible. But, and that wasn't because my parents were bad. It wasn't because of the time. It's just I got away with stuff. Kids these days can't get away with what used to be able to get away with. I guess where am I going with this is you can tune out a lot of the stuff. You can focus on your family. That's all, just spend your time with your family and your the people, your coaches, your mentors, those people around you, your groups that are really high up there that you need to be part of, and ignore the rest of it to a certain point. And I'm going to say one last thing. Voting has consequences, period. You need to know what you're voting for when you vote. That's our problem right now.
So I don't disagree with what you just said. I think that voting on a municipal level is proven to be more effective than voting on a national level. I think that the bipartisan citizen, I'll get more in trouble now. I didn't vote when Hillary ran against Trump. And I carry a copy of the Constitution in my backpack. I can show it to you. Like, I understand what I just said. I understand the abdication of responsibility. And normally I get mad at people when they don't vote. But I didn't vote when it was Trump versus Hillary because I was so mad. I felt held hostage. Like I was just angry at both sides for what they allowed to happen. And regardless of who you liked or who you didn't like, I don't think anybody, again, if you were to talk to somebody one-on-one on a logical scale, I don't think anybody would argue the point that those were the two most qualified humans in the United States of America to run a country. It became this really weird, clown show. And I don't regret voting because, I can't tell you who, it would have been a who am I voting against situation. And I don't want to do that. And it bugs me. Like the Biden versus Trump situation was the same thing. It was, I ended up voting and I threw away my vote on the libertarian candidate. Joe Jorgensen, just because I was like, all right, I'm not going to vote for either of these idiots. So I'll just go because I do need to exercise this and I want to get the sticker, metaphorically speaking. I don't think the national elections will matter until we can dismantle our bipartisan commitments, which goes back to dismantling our ideologies. I think that we need to take the entirety of what is the Republican and the Democratic systems. What's the wrong word? Regimes. That's the right word. We need to take both of these regimes and we need to cover them in petrol and burn them, because they don't serve us. Dude, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I believe that's actually generally the way I vote is fiscal conservatism, because I think that, that's the thing that impacts me the most and the thing that makes the biggest difference long term. The Republicans have never been fiscally conservative, ever. I believe in small governments. The Republicans have never supported small government, ever.
What are you talking about?
Dude, ever. On a national level, the Republicans have done nothing but it. Now, and then, so let's go the other way. I'm a social liberal. The Democrats have done nothing but like lock up black kids. The Democrats came up with the super predators. Most of the hardcore racists, if you go far enough back, were on the left.
Dude, I can beat all that. All right. So basically all the southern states are Democratic states, and they had slaves.
Yep.
All right. All the other states didn't. Right. So that's why the Civil War happened. 1960, when they're doing the Civil Rights Act, you know who stood up there and did the filibuster for hours and hours and hours?
Dude, it was the
Democrats.
Yeah.
So
Joe Biden is on record. That's what I'm saying. The Republicans get up there, and I remember voting for G.W. Bush. It was, I think, one of the first elections I got to vote in, because that was, I finally turned 18 and I was super happy, and the dude like checked all my boxes, and I was like, I agree with everything this man's saying, everything on his platform, and I actually did the reading, the research, and then he got up there and he did nothing that he promised and everything that he didn't. And then I remember voting for Obama, and I voted for Obama out of emotion. I was like, all right, I voted for the guy that I agreed with, and he didn't do shit, so I'm going to go vote. I liked Obama because he was the son of an immigrant. He had a Muslim name, but he wasn't a Muslim. He was raised by a white woman in a broken home, and he was abandoned by his father. The story I just told you is mine. Mm-hmm. Like, all of those things are true for me. And I saw this man and I was like, this is cool. So I don't agree with his political stance. That's fine. I believe in the checks and balances of the government. I believe he's a good man. And I believe he's going to try to do what's best according to his own moral compass. He signs in indefinite detention. Dude, are indefinite detention? Like, that's it's, there was the Patriot Act was the worst thing I think that we've ever done on paper as a country up until indefinite detention. And I voted for both these idiots. So, man, I don't know what we do until there's more than two assholes that I get to throw a vote at.
Yeah, I don't. And I see here, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. All right.
Let's do it.
So the only thing I'm going to say is nothing will change until we have term limits, period. Right. That's what we need to get rid of. Career politicians are the problem. Period. Oh, yeah. And the fact that these, we're totally way off the subject today. What the hell? So the issue really is the fact that when a president goes in, right, they're worth $800,000. They come out worth $22 million or $120 million.
Screw the president. Look at the congressman. Have you seen that website that tracks the congressional income before and after?
Yeah. Well, you just look at Pelosi. They're worth $650 million.
Yeah.
And because of all the bills and everything they did, like when Visa came to go back in the day, like I think it was in late 80s, early 90s, they were coming to, and they got IPO shares. The Pelosi's did. And that's how it all started. And that's like,
I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So if you look at all that, that's why we need to get rid of career politicians. It should be 4 years. It should be 8 years max. You're done. You can't go from here to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. You need to be done.
There's a problem with that too, though. And I'll paint that picture with Afghanistan.
CEO.
What do you mean?
How many CEOs stay forever?
Very few.
Exactly. And companies do really well, right?
Yeah. No, but companies aren't governments. Here's the issue that I was going to outline.
Yeah, they're becoming.
But for the better or for the worse, is it to our benefit? One of the issues that I think we struggle with is continuity. We went in and told the Afghani people, like, hey, rise up on your own behalf.
Don't get me started.
We'll help you with your freedom. And then they did that. And then we left, and then they got slaughtered, which, by the way, we've done that twice now. And then we did it to the Iraqis. And every time what's going to happen is countries aren't going to trust us. We go into a country and say, hey, help us, help you. And they're going to say, fuck you. The minute you vote in the other guy, you guys are going to leave us stranded, and you're going to let all the extremists slaughter us.
And I think that's because the people who are in there currently, right, that are not so basically without term limits, this is my take on it. The presidents come in, they're like, you're only here for max 8 years.
Right.
You're going to do what we tell you to do because we control everything. right? We're going to be here longer. We're going to be here when you leave, right? And then the next guy come in. We're going to be here longer than you are going to be here. And that's the problem. I think a lot of the presidents don't have the power. Yes, they do those executive orders and they're allowed to. I mean, the current one, like he can't even say, I'm told to call on so and
He's
so.
chasing butterflies on the White House lawn.
Right,
Like somebody else is definitely running.
And then the other one, and then Trump. I mean, I voted for Trump because businessmen, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure, and that he did a lot of stuff.
Trump was a Democrat for 20 years. He was in
So
bed
what?
with the Clintons.
Well, no, the issue,
He didn't
yeah, but you
believe
got to
any of the
remember,
things that he
you got to
put in front of
remember the
anybody.
Republicans today are the Democrats of the 60s.
Yeah, that's not unfair.
That is where we are. That's what happened.
Yeah.
We move this way, right? There is no real original Republicans because I wouldn't be one. The original Republicans is crazy, just like the Democrats. Everybody moved, right?
Yeah, dude, I think the whole bipartisan system is great. But keep going. I'm interrupting you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's my podcast. Shut up. I'm just kidding.
Dude,
I've had a really great time with you today because who knew we were going to go here, right? I'm sure you've had this guy could top all the time.
Never once on a podcast ever in my entire life. Yeah.
Well, this will be really good because if they want, just like you said at the event we were at, you're like, I can stand up here, tell you all this stuff, and then you're going to come use me anyway. So if you guys, I'm just going to say, if you guys need Google stuff, whatever, reach out to him. You can find it. He's everywhere. If you need to know anything, just reach out to him because you would anyway. But let's go back to this. I just think that we need a better system. One of the ways to get there is to have term limits. I understand what you're saying about, well, then they're only in for a period of time. Yes, that means the first 4 years they're going to do what they need to do, right? There's not someone stopping them saying, hey, you want to be here longer? You need to vote everything my way. That's what these Speaker of the Houses do. They go, all right, do you junior one? You've only been here for 1 year, whatever. If you want to stay here, you're going to do this. And that's what I see a lot.
Shut up.
Right, kind of thing. And then if you're only there for 8 years max, you're going to first 4 years, you're going to do whatever, and then the next 8 years, you're going to do what you say you're going to do and get out. It's supposed to be a position where you go in and you don't make any money, right? That's what politics was supposed to be. It's supposed to be for people who go in there, have money to grow things, and now these people go in there poor and come out extremely wealthy.
Yeah,
and I think that's our problem. That is the issue with this. The companies control politics.
Well, and then, I would jump on a lobbyist bandwagon if we had time, but I don't. But I think if I could genocide one group of people, it would be the lobbyists.
Yeah. Well, they're still controlled by companies.
Yeah.
Right. The lobbyist is there for these companies.
The company's stated mission is profitability. So an organization is going to do everything legally allowed to be profitable, which I'm fine with. But if you make some of these mechanisms legal, like, you can't blame the company for doing it. I think that if the legislative mechanism is meant to legislate, then it needs to be held accountable to the byproducts of that legislation. And some of what we've allowed to happen. What I think is interesting, I think the constitutionalists are interesting. Number one, here's a fun exercise. Anytime you run into a constitutionalist, anytime you run into somebody who says, oh, I think, the Constitution, go all the way back, whatever, ask them, and you have to back them into it. You can say, okay, I'm a big fan of the Constitution myself. I think the most important facet of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. I'm sure you'd agree. And they're like, oh, yeah, of course. Bill of Rights. Awesome. And then I stop and I say, can you name them? Can you name the Bill of Rights? And the answer is always a flat out no. And they try and they dance around it, but they don't even know the fucking Bill of Rights. They can't even remember 10. And there's like children's songs that you can sing that help you remember the Bill of Rights. The issue with the constitutionalists is what they don't understand is the Constitution was written to be changed. It says it's the very first thing in the Declaration of Independence. And they outline the criteria for that adjustment. And I feel like we've put ourselves in a position where we don't respect the iterative quality of what our founding fathers offered us. Somebody, I forget who it was. It might have been, I'm related to Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if I've shared that with you.
No, you have not.
Yeah.
But isn't half the world? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's really funny. My mom's white. She's hardcore Southern. We go all the way. Her maiden name's Caraway. We predate the United States. But one of the founding fathers wanted to rewrite the Constitution every, whatever it was, 20 years. And I think the fact that we're crowbarring ourselves into these rules that don't necessarily apply. I mean, look at the difference between the two ages, and what we're holding ourselves to, I think, can be pretty dangerous.
That's silence.
Yeah, I've actually got a hop, dude, with my apologies.
Me too. No, I was just looking. We're at 49. We normally go 30. So everybody got a ton of stuff today. I appreciate you being Kasim. I appreciate you being on, dude. I really do. I know we didn't talk about a bunch of stuff about what you do, but you are
Doesn't matter.
amazing. Yeah, I know you make enough money as it is, but people can reach out to you. They can find you if they need you. And again, I appreciate you being on, dude.
Cool, bro. Thanks for having me, Ed. Thanks everybody
Right.
for watching, listening. Please don't cancel me.
No one's gonna cancel you, dude. Here's the problem.
I put that shit in writing.
Dude, here's all I'm gonna say. That's the problem with this world, right? Last line. We need to be able to say what I want to say. You be able to say what you want to say. We don't have to agree. It wasn't in the Constitution to say we have to agree.
I'm not worried about you and I. I'm worried about
I'm getting to that.
SJW ends up watching this and deciding like, oh, Ed and Kasim are evil, racist, sexist.
Well, no, can't. And that's what I'm getting at. They have to be okay with us stating our point. If they want to come on and be part of the podcast and say their side of it, come on the show. That's not my fault.
Devoid of intellectual integrity.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm giving that option out there. If they want to come on, if they think we're not racist, we're not this, we're not prejudiced, we're not the issue we're saying is this is what we see wrong right now. How do we make it better? Make the world better by picking up trash, right? Yep. Leave it better than you found it. Don't tear it down just because you don't like something. If you don't remember history, give me 2 more minutes. If you don't, the tearing down statues, tearing down stuff, the problem with that is I don't agree with what those people did, but you'll redo history if you don't have stuff to tell you not to redo it. If you don't read history and don't understand it, we will repeat it, and we don't want to do that. So that's where we're at. And I want to thank you for being on the show today, Kasim. This is, again, if you like what we do here, even this one, hopefully you like what we do here. Please follow. And again, thank you for listening. And Kasim, thank you so much for being here, dude.
Thanks, bro. Take care.